So day two of the conference has just completed, and it's one of the crazier days. So in the morning, it started with a Geoffrey Dyson Award lecture. So that's like a lifetime achievement award in a way. And the professor that got it was one that researches swimming biomechanics. So first of all, I was like, when you say swimming, how do you even track that, right? Everything has to be waterproof, and you have to, especially with cameras, you have to deal with the splattering the fluids if it's set up above water, but underwater there might be some distortion and lighting issues. But all in all, it's very impressive. It's not exactly my areas of expertise at all or interest really, but like some of the ways they approach looking at the joint loads, they were finding out the joint loads by using computational fluid dynamics, where you estimate the distribution of fluid pressure on a specific surface or a body. And combining that with biomechanics, it's like the coolest idea ever. And then one of his things is talking about how do you measure drag, especially like on a stroke to stroke basis. And they have like chains of force plates essentially. And then you just like every time you press on the force plate, apply a force, there's like a free body diagram, and then the force applied at that point. You just compute that, compare it to the next time point, and then you can get it dragged that way, beyond the equations that you can get. And he talks about how markerless motion capture, as in many fields, is like it's making a big push because you don't need to worry about markers, and a lot of the time in biomechanics, attaching markers to a body is one of the more annoying things. So all in all, that's a very cool lecture. I didn't sleep that well, so I was like falling asleep a few times in the middle, but it is swimming, so no offense. The next one is the New Investigator Award, I believe, and it was again really really fun, and that's because last year I was selected to compete in the New Investigator Award with my first baseball paper. But then it's like looking at all of the other presentations, I'm like, how the hell did I get selected in the first place in terms of just how impressive everybody else's were. And one of them looked at the let me think. Okay, I know one of them looks at sprinting and using computation modeling to examine when does the hamstring experience the highest stress. And not too surprisingly to most sprint coaches and athletes, the faster you run, the higher load the bicep femoris muscle experiences, which explains, the fact that they're always popped, and also the longer range that maximum load occurs at is also coincident with the this higher sprinting velocity. So that was like a very impressive computational modeling PhD. And it was only done on one subject, but considering how much work you need to jumping from one software to another software, it's pretty great. And I guess, okay, another observation with the New Investigator Award is it's not that new. Like when I did my New Investigator Award, I was literally at the end of my first year as a PhD student. And the first 3 months of that first year, I was like, what the hell is going on? So I guess compared to them, I'm probably one of the youngest contestants, so I have that to be proud of, because obviously I didn't win last year, and I wasn't selected this year. I think like they only select each people once. All right, another thing. So after that, then I went to the sprinting oral presentation session. There were some very interesting stuff. One of the flatmates here, actually, he's from Cardiff University or Cardiff Metropolitan, and he looked at the kinematic differences in two lanes when you're running an indoor track. So it's like an indoor track with a slight bank. And he did mention that it's looking at sprinting, but with sub-maximal intensity due to safety concerns, which from my perspective, totally understandable, because of my setup. People, if you come dunk in my study, you have to run from a corner in. So limited by worries and logistical constraints and how that affects your actual data collection protocols. It's just the practical side of biomechanics research you have to contend with. And he found, when you run on a slope, it's not too surprising again that you have some differences between your limbs because one limb is on the inside, one limb is on the outside. So not too surprising. And let me think what the other sprinting ones were. So it's so many things happen, it's all a blur, but one of them looks at the differences in timing and reaction time and how using the forces to gauge the reaction time in sprint starts may be pretty good, but it's a very visual and manual method. I'm not sure how well it does, because the guy also said that we need to push towards automation, and I think that that's really how you should do it. It's automating, taking the human error out of it. You leave in some systematic biases and errors in the method, but at least you hope that the errors are systematic. And before all of that, I forgot to mention, I have a mentor breakfast, so 7:45 to 8:45, super early. And that was with a Professor Kevin Bohr. He's from Australia. He does a lot of the AFL kicking stuff, and it's hard to know what to expect with these mentor sessions, but he's just very impressed with what we are doing in our lab, a lot of our methodologies with the treating each subject on an individual basis, which again, if you're a coach, everything is like a one-to-one almost, unless you work with like a group of 350 students or whatever. And he also really likes how we attack the idea of filtering your signals, because every time you play with your signals, are you changing the things you actually measure, or are you getting rid of the noise? Like, he gave me a 5-step process in which to deal with that idea of picking a filter, because from the signal processing classes that you may or may not have taken, it's when you have a signal, you need to process it, and how do you process it? It's very, very it's paramount to your ultimate result. And what happens after that? I remember I took a nap in the afternoon because I was so tired, so I actually missed out on some sessions, but I think it's okay because, my brain needs sleep, so I am sleeping. That's the way it is. Then later on, they went to I also went to a coffee break where I talked to one of the person who works with Stanford baseball, amazing guy, lots of knowledge on sports biomechanics, Bryson Nakamura, I think is his name. He's an awesome guy, and we were just talking about how he approaches using biomechanical data to help the coaches, and you'd be surprised to learn that a lot of the stuff it's really common sense. It's like we establish a technical model, and in our case, obviously, it's backed by not just the position or kinematic data. We also look at the forces and the joint load and the momentum of the body, approaching it from a very mechanical and fundamental level. And that's how we establish our technical model. Be like, if you do these broad stroke things right, you are likely to have an efficient technique. And once we have that, then we take the component, whichever component we want out of the technical model that may help the athlete. So it's or really in many cases, it would just be like the lowest hanging fruit in terms of technical model. We have that, we use biomechanics to get the real-time measurements to compute that element of the technical model, and we provide feedback. We allow the athlete to explore. And I love the ways he says, okay, how did you feel after that trial? What about I give you one tweak, right? I'll give you one constraint or one way to do it differently. And then we go back, we see how it feels, and we see if your feeling relates to the technical model or the component of the metric that we choose. And again, it's very, very good stuff. It's essentially spot on with a lot of the things I've learned and heard and agreed with from Joe's podcasts and many others. So after that, there's a applied session with gymnastics, which was also very fascinating. They focused quite a lot on sort of position level stuff with the joint angles in handstands and the long swing. It's like when you spin around the bar, and it's again, kinematics has its limitations, but a lot of the method stuff with coordination and investigating the coordination and control patterns underneath, that's just good stuff. So okay, I guess the main takeaway really from that is the steps of learning. When you first approach a new skill or task, you have your what they call a freezing of degree of motion, where you are very rigid. You want to accomplish the task, and the less things you have to control, the better. So in a gymnastic scenario, it would be like if you use assistance from the wall, or someone holding your legs in a handstand, or everything's very controlled in a closed chain environment. And I'm just thinking, because the reason I go is like, okay, how can this translate to dunking, right? Dunking, especially as you get into the trick dunks, essentially becomes a gymnastics discipline in a way. And I'm just like, okay, so when we talk about when you are trying to learn a new dunk, for me, the biggest learning part was the behind the back dunk. The freezing of degree of freedom, it's like, okay, what do I need to do to accomplish the task? And in handstand, it's like a somewhat static movement, but in a dynamic movement, it can be something like reducing your speed, just doing hand speed drills, just doing on low rim, take the whole jumping and ball control before the start of the movement, take all of those extra variables out of it, reduce your degree of freedom, and then just practice the movement. And obviously, all of these stuff, even before I describe it, all of the coaches and athletes, they just do it naturally. They'd be like, hey, doing this makes the task easier, and it makes sense. The next part, after the freezing of degree of freedom, is the searching solutions, which is just your brain of self-organizing and finding a way to get the task done. It's a way to get it done, and there's no reason to believe that the way you found is somehow magically the most mechanically and technically perfect way, or else why would there be any coaches in any sports ever, right? But it is a solution, and all of your subsequent solutions will sort of spring off from that, unless you have some massive technical rewind, which again is not impossible, but you don't really see it that much if the coach is trying to respect how you come to that movement solution. And after you have the solution right now, then the next part is let's talk the searching of solutions for behind the back dunk, for example. And that will be just like finding a way to actually transfer the ball from your left hand to the right hand. Some people might transfer quite a lot closer to the left lateral side. So all you have to do with the right hand is you just go straight up into the dunk. But then for some others, the transfer might be like in the middle of the back. Then there's like different roles of each hand that needs to happen for you to perform the dunk. And once you have a solution, then there's the freeing of degree of freedom, where now that you get the basics of the task done, you can start to perform it in the intended context, right? In dunking, that could be you can now start hitting it on low rims. You are not just like the balls won't just fly out of your hand because you have like a little bit of velocity. You can start to control more things more than just the hand stuff. You can maybe do that off the dribble, do it off the lob, off the bounce, right? So that would be the freeing of degree of freedom. And then once you get that, the final step is the exploitation of the degree of freedom. That's when you have to react to new stuff, new stimulus, new constraints. Like, oh, I am suddenly using a FIBA 6 ball. The surface of the ball feels different. I'm jumping on an indoor court in a completely new place. I'm doing it off a lob instead of off the dribble, right? All of this changing context, it's like when you reach the level of mastery, that's where you can accomplish. And just breaking the stuff down and like me thinking through in my head how it relates to learning a new dunk, that's again very, very good stuff. So yeah, that's a long day today. I'm glad I took the nap in the middle of the day, so we'll see what happens tomorrow. Tomorrow there's going to be a social event, which is going to be fun considering me and socializing. But yeah, again, early start tomorrow. I'll try to shoot some hoops up again. Might need to shoot a video, but yeah. All right. Thanks for watching. If you somehow made it here, you're a sicko, which I respect. So yeah, see you tomorrow.